Hello, hello to the couple of you who are already in the room. I'm just going to give a few minutes to get us started and let other people figure out where that connect link is, and we'll get started from there. So just sit back and relax, and we'll get started in a few minutes here. Hello for everyone who is starting to join us right now. I'm just giving everyone a few minutes to come in the room. We're starting to have people show up now as they're seeing it's the top of the hour. So just sit back and relax. We'll get started probably 5, 6 minutes after the hour.
Let me just figure out.
Okay, friends, let's get started. I will let other people in the room as they come in, but I know everyone's time is precious, and I told you that we'd be starting here at 10 o'clock Eastern right now. I'm excited to welcome our guest here in a few seconds, Travis Ketchum from Campaign Refinery. But right now, for the people who are in the room with me, I have a question for you. And my question for you is, what is your favorite marketing channel that you use right now? Do you use social media? Do you use videos? Do you use advertising? Or, what is it that you use in order to market your courses or market your services, market your company or anything like that? Throw it in the chat for me right now. I see some people furiously typing. Mary Jazz, thank you. Email is your favorite. We're wild about that answer. Social media. All right, Jane, thanks so much. Appreciate that. Facebook and LinkedIn. All right, nice. Anyone else? I see a few more people in the room. Elise, Jane, Rachel. Maybe they're just lurkers. Maybe they're bots. We'll find out. Or maybe it's the summertime. Well, the reason I ask everyone what your Lisa, thanks, email, I appreciate that. The reason why I ask what your favorite marketing channel is because sorry, I get distracted by people's comments and I see what they're putting in there. Rachel, it would be email if I knew people were receiving them. That is what we're here to talk about today, which is fantastic. Um, the reason I put that out there is because we are constantly told all of the time that email is dead, right? That email has been taken over by social media, it's been taken over by AI, it's been taken over by video, it's been taken over by so many things. And as I will credit Travis with this, who you'll be meeting here in a few seconds, he actually is the first, he's the one who said the other day, and the people who tell you that, how did they usually tell you? They usually send it to you in an email, right? Which is kind of, I think that says everything about it right now. Um, Email is still in today, it's 2026. We're only actually, I say we're looking at 2027 now. Uh, it's still the number one marketing asset that you have in your business. People open emails. The people who have purchasing power are the ones who still, they get up and they look at an inbox every day. Um, there's still an expectation that you're going to answer emails or look at emails in whatever work that you do. Your clients and your business partners and your the other companies that you work with. Email is the way that we all still expect to communicate, and so it's still the most important communication channel that you have. I know that we're going to bring this up again later in the presentation as well, but one stat that I just wanted to throw out there for everybody is that 22% of the people who are on your email list disappear every year. And I'm going to let Travis explain more about why that is a little later here, and as he gives his presentation or whatnot. But just let that sink into you right now. If you have 100 people on a list right now, that means 22 of them will go away, and that doesn't mean necessarily they die or anything like that. But people move on from their jobs, or people create an email account just for like a junk email account that they go and they sign up for list for, or people type in the wrong email address or whatever. So 22 of those people are gone. If you have 1,000, it's 222 people. Like if you, I always think it's a really great visual exercise to go through the process of saying, hey, 20 people in a room. Okay, that's not so many. You've had a dinner party with, 20 people in your house. But then when you go to 200, like that's a really fantastically sized room, right? Like that's a lot of people. And then for those of you who are here or are aspiring to grow a list of like 10,000, then that's 2,000 people that leave every year. 2,200. And then if you get up to that million number, right? Like if you keep growing up, 100,000, a million number, that's a large number of people that leave your list every year for any number of reasons. So I'm going to leave it right there for right now. And I'm going to invite Travis to join me here. He's just popped on. Excellent. Nice to see you, Travis. How are you? Just make sure we
Doing
can hear
great.
you.
Doing great. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate
Awesome.
it.
And thanks, Travis, for getting up so early today. He's actually on the west coast of the United States. And so I appreciate his being early and energetic today as we get this started here. But Travis, you actually had a story about you actually have one or several clients in your business that have like this million person list or million data point list, and you've seen them lose, the 250,000 a year. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, we've had the very good luck and good fortune to work with some pretty significant senders and, across quite a few data points, hundreds of millions of contacts, we see a pretty consistent decay of that, 20 to 25% a year end up churning out for one reason or another. And as you mentioned, there's changing jobs, changing careers. How many of us in the room, if you raise your hand, do you have more than one personal email? I think a lot of us have had more than one. Yep,
My wife,
exactly.
my wife literally yells at me like her jaw drops every time because she works in a totally different universe where she's got her one email, but because I'm a marketer, I probably have 20, right? And so she just can't and I'm sure that many people in the room are exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. And the reality is that the context and how we elect to use those and where we elect to use them changes over our lifespan. And so some of those just stop getting used, some of them get phased out, things change. Um, we're all human. I hate to say it, but some of us literally die. So,
It's true.
there's that component, but most of it is just behavior change over time, career change over time. Um, old
Well, I think
email.
about what about, so this is just triggered by, my son just went to college, right? And so the email that he's used for the last 4 years in secondary school or high school, that's gone away now. And now he's going to college. And so he's going to have that university email address that he'll use as his primary email address for hopefully only 4 years, maybe three. I don't know. We'll see. But then that's going to disappear when he joins a company, right? And so yeah, just life moments, right? You get married or you whatever, you change, things change about your life.
And that's before we even get to the point of, people may just be not that into the email list anymore, right? So even if the email is valid, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is still good for you to send, right? That comes into some of the greater deliverability questions in there. But, there's lots of reasons why you need to trim, 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 trim. But even with all of that working against you, email is still a massive needle mover. And so, outside of running the software business, like I also do content, right? So I run an email list well outside of the email world as well. And even with, list decay for one reason or another, an email list can actually significantly outpace and outperform a lot of other channels. So, for example, like I do YouTube videos about electric vehicles as like a side hobby that gets
Oh,
hundreds of
wow.
thousands of views per month across my videos, right? Pretty big reach. But then I get sponsors and I can drive as many conversions from a 4,000 person email list as a video that gets 100,000 views. So that really underscores that the relationship that you have with your email list and the power and context of that email list is really the David and Goliath thing here, right?
I
And
want
so,
to I want to I want to re-emphasize that because I think that maybe have sailed over a few people's heads, right? So I'm a YouTube creator myself as well, and I've had million view videos as well. But let's just say that you put a video out there and you have 100,000 people look at it, especially on YouTube as well, because at the end of the day, you can't directly communicate with those people, right?
mhm.
So converting them from seeing your video, like if you put an ad in there or you have a CTA or a call to action inside that video or something, you're saying that you get better conversion from like a 1 or 2,000 person list on email than you would for a video that's been seen by 100,000 or even 200,000 people.
Correct, because the relationship and context that I've been able to foster with the people that are on the email list is so much stronger that even though I have great viewership for my niche on YouTube, and it does, I mean, those YouTube videos, for example, have sold $32 million in vehicles in a year, right?
Woo! Good for
Uh,
you, man.
so it's like not an insignificant thing, and yet my email list of around 4,100 people drives just as many conversions and sales now as my videos do.
That's amazing.
So it's really about quality, curation, and making sure you're doing all the things so that not only are you, doing the strategy component with email, but that you have your technical stuff in line. And the technical component I know can be a little dry, and a lot of people are like, oh man, I don't want to deal with all that. But it's an important key ingredient to making email really sing. And that's
So
why we're
let's
here
let
today.
yeah, that's why we're here today. Like, and I want to go deeper on that, and I want to tee you up as to what how what these technical details are about how emails end up getting in the inbox and recognized. And then I want to re-emphasize what you've said a couple of times, but again, I don't think it's emphasized enough. Email allows you to build a relationship, right? People trust you when they're emailing you, and especially if they're responding to your emails, and you're able to create that thread with them. You're really building a conversation that is one of the richest and most trusted conversations that we have today. And so you are the founder of a company called Campaign Refinery.
Correct.
And Campaign Refinery, for all of everybody who's I've still got people coming in, which is fantastic. Uh, uh, for everybody who's in here, everybody has some type of CRM. Everybody has some type of service that you use in order to send emails to your list. We promoted Experienceify. We promote either the platform, Experienceify platform, or we use Go Plus as one of the ways that we do that. Many people came to us from MailChimp or Active Campaign or Constant Contact, Aweber. So these are all the services that are aggregators that allow you to put a list together and then send a campaign to that list. So Campaign Refinery is in that universe. So Travis, why don't you go a little deeper there and tell us about your background and some of the technicalities that you figured out in order to get inboxes. And a teaser before you go there. I actually used Campaign Refinery to get you into this webinar today. So let's just be honest there. Full disclosure on the affiliate relationship. There you go.
Yeah. Cool. So let me just kind of talk about why the world needed more stuff in email in the first place, right? Because look, I'll be real. I know that there's a ton of email platforms out there. And prior to running an email platform, I ran a contest platform actually that had over 30,000 users, generating, like 100 million opt-ins. And it was a successful contest platform for generating email leads. However, we integrated with all the other email service providers. I was using at the time Infusionsoft, which is now Keep, kind of like we all did back in the day. And I
Huge.
found something really peculiar. I was generating a lot of leads. My customers were generating a lot of leads, but we all universally felt like email deliverability was this black box snake oil situation that we didn't understand, and that there were some set of unwritten rules that nobody wanted to tell us.
Mm.
And I was very frustrated by that, and I said, "This is crazy. There's 14 layers of 18 different things that you that you need to add to or know to make email deliverability work." So, when I realized that all of my customers had the exact same problem I did, I needed to go educate myself. I needed to be curious about the problem, just like anything else that I approach in life. So I went and spent $3.5 million of my own money and many years of my life figuring out how the heck do I get email to inbox consistently and at scale. And let me tell you, I knew it was going to be a hard problem. I knew it was going to be expensive. I was off by a factor of 10. Okay. But the good news is I have done all of that pain and learning for you guys. And so
Yeah.
I can sort of give you the distillation of that education that was very expensive, very painful for me to go through, and help you understand that it's really actually not that complicated once you know where all the booby traps are. All right.
Nice.
And so as I was finding different things along the way, I incorporated them into the platform. And the reason that we're here today is that one very significant component that has always been true, apparently, and always continues to be true, apparently, is the integrity of the data on your email list. Because at the
Mm.
end of the day, you are having to say, I want to send X content to Y people, and you need to do it not only in a way that functionally is valid, but in a way that is not risky. Because email deliverability at the very, very end of the day, is just like all the other relationships in our life, and it's about reputation. And the reputation that you have, not just with the recipients that are getting your content, which is, of course, very important, But before you even get to that gatekeeper, you need to talk about the relationship and reputation that you have with the actual email service providers. So I'm talking about Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, Comcast, right? All of those type of providers are grading you as a sender. And there are things that positively impact your reputation and negatively impact your reputation, just like a credit score. Okay. And so you are doing things knowingly and unknowingly that are influencing your ability to reach those who you've worked very, very hard to get on your list. And sometimes we let our desire or need to hang on to things that we think, we worked hard to get are actually holding you back because it's impacting your reputation in a negative way so that your most excited audience cannot see your email in the first place because you're not willing to let go of the parts that are hurting you.
Mm,
Does that make sense for everybody? So
absolutely.
there are
Well,
behaviors and practices that you must do that will actually allow you to let go. Kind of like think about spring cleaning, right? Like getting that garage clean so you can actually do something in the space. This is a very critical component to running a successful email program, right? So as I said earlier, like I keep my lists quite trim. And so even though I have an audience of hundreds of thousands of people on YouTube that consistently watch my videos, I care most. My North Star is about 4,100 people on my email list because I have curated down and distilled down and I've let go of those who don't want to be there and that are bad or risky. And I've focused on that relationship. And the net result is a very healthy, very active email list that always hits the inbox and makes sure that when I have a message to deliver to my people, it gets there. And that is
mm,
not always the case. And it's not always obvious why that's not the case. So, my goal today, by the time we end here, is that you have a better understanding that there's a lot more to an email than can it physically receive email and help you understand should I be sending to this email address because is it actually safe to send to? So, I hope that that's the
I
big
love it.
takeaway that everyone gets from all of this.
Absolutely love it. Do you want to? We're still currently sharing my screen. Do you want to pull up your slides real quick?
Yeah,
And
yeah, sure. I'd be happy to do that. So
fantastic.
yeah, I'm just gonna this is not fancy guys because at the end of the day, I sent a request there.
Oh,
At the end of the
sorry, I
day,
didn't. There you go.
yeah,
Mhm.
you're all good. We don't need to let me just get this right here. There we go. All right. At the end of the day, we don't really need to be fancy or overly complicated here. My goal is to just impart knowledge as simply and cleanly as possible. So, what I want to help you understand is that there is actually, I call them seven sneaky list cleaner or list killers that are impacting your performance to reach the inbox. And these are seven different types of emails that are technically valid, but not healthy to send to. All right. So we're just going to go through each example and I'm going to talk about sort of how they get there, why they get on your list in the first place. And then importantly, at the end, I will give you a solution on how you can automatically remove them and stay safe. Sound good?
Sounds good. And I want to call out before you start, Norma, thank you so much for putting that exclamation in there about adding this to your daily actions. But actually, that's one of the key reasons why we're here is that we want to make it easy for you to do this. And I know Travis is going to introduce a way to do that at the end. So the last thing that we want to do is put another thing on everybody's to-do list, right? Because we
Yep.
already have to-do lists that we never get done. So stick around for another 15 minutes.
Thankfully, we live in 2026 and we can make the beep boop robots do our biddings. All
Nice.
right. So the very first thing that's super obvious is invalid addresses, right? So people might just type in gibberish and you have a bad email address, and that email is going to bounce, right? And even though it didn't exist, if it was, let's say, at gmail.com, at yahoo.com, but the first part of it is total nonsense, Google's gonna make a little note. They're gonna take their little book out. And they're gonna go, is trying to send an email. Like we got the request, but that mailbox doesn't exist. We're not gonna punish you for this one, but we're gonna make a note about that. If we start seeing this a lot, that might be a signal to us that they aren't doing things with their list that are, gold standard to keep them up to par. They're not one of our good ones. They're someone to keep an eye on that we may want to do something with later and punish if we keep seeing too many of these on the list. So there are a lot of services out there, such as Go Plus, that can check for this level, and this is where they stop. Okay. They try to check,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
mhm.
does it have an MX record? Can it physically receive email? And that, as far as they're concerned, job is done. But I know from billions of emails sent, the job is far from done. Just because it's valid does not mean that it's safe.
While I've got you, before you go into the next thing, um, because we have such an expert in the room. Another thing that we see in Go Plus is there is actually in the analytics where we can see hard bounce versus soft bounce. Like there's a soft bounce thing and a hard bounce. What's the difference between hard bounce and soft bounce?
Yeah, so a hard bounce means this is absolutely, smoke and mirrors. This does not exist at
Mm,
all.
okay.
A soft bounce can happen for a couple of reasons. It can happen if their mailbox is full. It can happen if your reputation is a little dicey and the service provider, such as Google, is trying to decide if they trust you or
Mm,
not. It can also happen if you haven't sent for a very long time and you're suddenly sending to a large audience. They may just say, hey, we think we're going to trust you and we're going to let this retry a few times and we're going to space out the volume so that we can see if the complaints are high or people really still want to hear from you. So basically, they're throttling you. And so they give you a soft bounce, which doesn't mean it's invalid. It just means it's invalid right now. Come back and try again later.
sure. Sure, sure, sure,
That's
sure.
the big difference between hard and soft bounce, essentially.
Thanks. Thanks,
As with
appreciate that.
everything, there's
Like I
more to
said,
it.
now since I've got you on the line, I'm going to get all my questions answered too. So, and just a reminder, to everyone, if you've got a question, throw it in the chat, and either Travis will take it along the way, or we have some time saved at the end to circle back for them.
For sure. All right. So the second type that you need to check for is complainers. Now, we all are aware that if someone complains, you think that you know about it. But actually, considering that most of your email list is Google, uh, usually 50 to 80% of your recipients are Google recipients. Google does not tell the average email service provider that a specific person complained. So if a person with a Gmail address hits report spam, you will see a spam report in terms of a percentage or a number of complaints, but you won't know who complained, which means you could have someone who, instead of hitting the nice, big, easy unsubscribe button, is just someone who thinks that the report spam button is equally as useful. And the problem is you don't have an automatic way to get them off of your list. And so you could have someone who's just pissed off, and every single time you send them an email, it is hurting reputation, hurting reputation, hurting reputation, hurting reputation. Now, platforms such as us that have huge scale can actually identify a little bit tighter who the type of people are that complain, right? So, like, we all have probably run a business, we've done some kind of sales at some point, and I hate to make snap judgments, but sometimes someone walks in, and you're like, this person's probably going to complain, right? Right? And that may be fair, that may not be fair, but after a while, you get a pretty good sense of that being true. And what we're actually able to do is we can identify in advance the highest likelihood people to complain. So that if you are really risk averse, you can actually preemptively unsubscribe people who are added to your list who are known to be, and I hate if anyone's name is Karen here, the Karens of the world. You can
Mm.
preemptively unsubscribe them before they have a chance to wreak havoc on your list. All right. So, pretty cool feature to be able to remove people who are known complainers on other people's lists so that you can go ahead and say, that's not the kind of party we're trying to throw on this email list. All right.
I love it.
Now, the next one is spam traps. And this one is not very well understood. So, I really want to take a moment on this one. Spam traps basically exist in two ways, right? Spam traps can be seeded into lists that are very suspect and fishy. So if you were to go on Fiverr and buy, 1,000 leads in your niche, you think I'm gonna add 1,000 subscribers, or I'm gonna, some guy in some shady Facebook group is trying to sell you a list to somebody. that is going to have spam traps baked into it because essentially the email providers or the big data aggregators, they sneak in a few little email addresses in there that are trying to catch people that are looking for the easy button and the cheat code and doing it the wrong way. Okay, that's the kind of spam trap that most people hear about. And so if you send to that list and 1,900 other people that bought the same copy of the same Excel sheet from the same guy in the same shady Facebook group are all sending to it, the email service provider knows, hey, because these five people, the same five people that shouldn't exist, that you shouldn't have been able to actually acquire through normal means, are showing up, boom, spam trap. And it only takes one spam trap, even in thousands of people, to be a huge negative thing. It's kind of like it's not just like your credit card bounces. It's like you walked up to the undercover cop and you bought the drugs. That's
Yeah,
essentially
sure.
what that version of
It's the
spam
it's
trap
the
is.
one mark. It's the one mark on your credit score, or it's the one mark on your personal history, whatever that, the database accesses and says, "Oh, there's the mark." And so therefore,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that's the kind that people are probably most likely to be familiar with. But what you aren't familiar with usually is the fact that spam traps can actually start as legitimate emails. So if somebody gets on your list, let's say back in 2019, right? And they abandon that email list in 2022. Here you are in 2026 trying to email that list, but maybe you didn't email often enough in the beginning to know that email had gone cold. Well, the problem is that the email provider like Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, etc., will intermittently turn old email addresses back on. And if any email comes to that, it is considered a spam trap. So what that means in practice is you could have been doing everything right. You could have been running ads, creating videos, going to events, collecting emails over time. But a lot of us, unfortunately, end up sitting on our email list for far too long. And so what that means is that you may have emails that were once genuine and valid, collected in the real appropriate way, but through life events or whatever, you may not have emailed them as often. And so you didn't catch the warning signs that the email had actually gone cold. And so you go to send your broadcast, you tee it up, you fire it away, and yeah, it got accepted, but that was because unfortunately you were in the window where it was being used as a spam trap. And so even though you didn't really do anything wrong other than not sending your email often enough, you accidentally caught yourself in a booby trap of your own design. So this is the spam trap that most people are not aware of. So it's that dormant email that can be used and lit back up and really kind of catch your finger in the cookie jar as far as the email provider is concerned. And they see that equally as bad as buying the shady list off the guy on Facebook. Okay.
Is
So
is the number one rule still just like don't buy lists? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, even we could just say just for the reason that you just explained, because even if the list, used to have 100% valid people on it, they could be 10 years old and some of those could now be spam traps, et cetera. So is that still just like a number one email marketing sort of covenant or whatever you want to say?
yeah, so that is a huge piece of it. And the other component is a lot of people miss the context of what makes an email relationship powerful is the context. How did they
Mhm.
get there? Do they know you? Do they trust you? Does your word mean something? And if they'd never heard of you before, your word doesn't mean anything. So beyond the fact that it can blow up in your face for all of these technical reasons, it's not going to really provide the value for you either. You'd be much better off getting 100 people through legitimate means that know, like, and trust you, that have heard about you and raised their hand, than 100,000 people that don't know who you are and don't want to hear anything from you. Personal opinion, I've seen this play out many, many, many times. All right, I'm going to keep checking. I see some questions and I'm definitely going to get to them, but I want to get to this list just so that we are all on the same page, right?
Yes, please.
So the fourth of the seven is disposable email addresses, right? This is something that an invalid check is never going to be able to help you with because technically the email is valid. But what that service fails to identify is that that email is by design going to become invalid and self-destruct after a certain amount of time. And I don't mean necessarily like, Apple has their, email relay where they mask an email and the user can turn it off. I'm talking about ones that are from services that are known to self-destruct after a set amount of time every single time. And so what happens is some users use these services when they come in, they opt in for your lead magnets, for your webinar. Again, that context matters. They do it because they don't know, like, and trust you yet. And so what they do is they create an email that will forward on the content to their real email inbox, but it is designed to die sometimes after a few minutes, sometimes after a few hours, and sometimes after a few days. But the point is that you may be hanging on to an email address that did technically accept your email. However, it's going to self-destruct and become invalid. And again, when next time you send to it, that email doesn't exist anymore. And so what happens? Google pulls out their little notebook and they say, you know what? I'm going to make another mark here because you just mailed an invalid email, even though it was technically valid hours or days ago, right? It self-destructed by design. And so there's a ton of these services. These services grow by the day. And so understanding what those are, you may elect to say, hey, as soon as it comes in, I want to actually just remove that because I don't want to risk sending to that. And the user may say, hey, I didn't get it. Well, go sign up with a real email address, right? Like we're here to curate a real relationship with you. And so we want to make sure that you use your real email address so that we can send you the most valuable information. And of course, you can one click unsubscribe at any time, right? That's the best practice way to do it. All right. Next is role accounts. I actually did see a note in here about, you work with real estate agents, but another component is even within an organization, there are role accounts that are position based, not person based. And so you end up with these emails that are things like support at, info at, admin at, um, you know,
Director, marketing,
director.
yeah, marketing ad. Yeah. Mhm.
Exactly. And the point is that these are associated to a position within an organization and not a person, which means the person who is responsible for that inbox changes over time. Just by, like we talked about, people transition out of companies, but if an email continues to be used, you think, great, I want to reach that new person. But again, that context matters. These are sort of like in the B tier of risk, right? A tier of risk is spam traps, known complainers, right? But B tier are people that will lose the context because the person that receives your email in a year from now might not be the same human that opted in and requested information in the first place. And so they've lost the context of why they're getting email from you. And so when they get that email, they say, what the hell? I didn't ask for this email. And what do they hit? Report as spam, right? Because they didn't ask for it. But someone in that role did before. And so the risk sort of surface area has gone up compared to a normal, regular, authentic email, right? We all good on that one? Pretty straightforward. All right. Now we have bots. Now, I know a lot of people have mistrust in open rates, and understandably so. They are an imperfect science, but they are a science nonetheless. They do still matter as a measuring stick compared to how did my email do yesterday? How's my email going to do tomorrow? And you do still want to zero in on open rates, even if they are slightly inflated because of email clients, the software that people use to view their email. But what you don't want is you don't want bots that have gone out probably trying to get a search engine backlink from you and accidentally filled out one of your forms. And then they tend to open and click everything, but they, guess what? They buy nothing. They can never attend your webinar. They can never go to your sales page. They can never, like your video on YouTube, right? These are not real people. It is machines doing machine stuff for reasons. And at the end of the day, all they're really doing is a couple things. One is they're taking up room in your CRM and email list. They are potentially increasing your overall cost of maintaining and sending that email list. They are falsely inflating your numbers, and they are never delivering the value that you're running your email list and doing the effort for in the first place, right? And so you want to scrub these out so that you can have a real indication about how successful or unsuccessful a particular campaign is, because you might be killing yourself saying, why is my click-through rate for my content so low? When they do click through, why does no one buy? Well, let's start by removing the white noise that is increasing the complexity and the cost and the maintenance sort of overhead of your email list. And let's get down to the real people. because there is literally no value in having bots in your email list, right? And so
Mm.
identifying those, even though they're real email addresses and even though they are opening and they are clicking, getting them off of your list helps clean the data at every other stage of your business so that you can make informed decisions off of real people and find where the real bottlenecks are. All right. Next is typos. How many of us are perfect humans? If anyone, we're all perfect humans here. Okay, great. Well, then this one we can skip over this. No, I'm just kidding. No, so typos happen to the best of us, right? Especially if you've seen, God forbid, autocorrect on Apple devices these days. People are have all the good intentions of subscribing to your list, attending your thing, signing up for your service, what have you. And either they're in a rush, they weren't quite paying attention, or they got nailed by some kind of autocorrect and they accidentally fat fingered the address. They had the intention of putting the real one in there, but they end up transposing a letter, adding additional letter, or sometimes we see like Gnail instead of Gmail, iCloud with two D's or 3D, like a key gets stuck or whatever, and you get this well-intentioned email coming in that is simply mistyped. And even though the intention was good, the outcome is the same. It is a bad email address that you must pull from your list or at least be able to identify and flag. And so maybe you can go in there because if you have maybe a small trickle of high value leads, it might be worth just manually reviewing and saying, hey, who was categorized as a typo? And most of us can look at this and say, oh, that was supposed to be Gmail. This is a very unique way of screwing that up, but they found a way to screw it up. But I can understand what they were meaning. And you might be able to, if the context calls for it, just correct it to Gmail, correct it to iCloud, but you've been able to identify and flag who those are, so you're not wasting your time weeding through all the other invalid email addresses that are on there. You've actually flagged them as typos, so you can focus your effort and make it a reasonable task to potentially clean up that remaining portion of your list and recover someone who had all the intention in the world of being a fantastic subscriber on your email list, but through a simple human error, they cannot receive your email properly, right? So identifying that is really the deal. And that's the full seven. So that I want to take a moment. I know we're doing full Q&A at the end, but I want to take a moment to see if I missed anything here, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to start. I'll start backwards and forwards. Real quick answers that for role accounts, you say you're going to get accounts that are like info and admin. What about sending from one of those accounts? Is that a valid practice?
Yeah, so it really depends on how healthy your program is overall. So we often send from support at because we need multiple people to manage the replies. And by
Right,
having a shared inbox through an actual help desk software to handle replies makes a lot of sense for the sort of structure and scale of the organization where we're at. But that may not make sense depending on your individual situation. So, for example, on the YouTube side of things, when I send from there, I actually do it in an interesting way. As I have my like a regular personal branded email that I use for things like sponsorship requests, brand deals, um, signing up for services, right? But then I have a separate standard inbox that is hey at, right? So it
right,
is kind of a role-based thing, but I did that so that made sure I didn't get any threaded replies, but I didn't want it to go into a more impersonal shared role inbox like the way that our software one does. Because I
right,
think that the context of the user for software, if they want to reply, they're often replying expecting a software type experience. And so support that is totally fine. But the thing that you have to be mindful of is if you don't have all of your other ducks in a row, what you could end up doing is accidentally tanking the reputation of that email. And you have to be mindful that if you don't have best practices in place, that role email address can exist for a good reason. But if you screw it up, you might screw up your ability for someone to get proper support replies. Like when they go to your normal, support box and they say,
right.
"Hey, something's wrong, I need help," and you reply, they might not see it if you screwed up the other stuff, right? Because the reputation of that inbox is messed up. So there's a little bit of calculated risk there, but if you're doing everything else properly, it's totally acceptable in the right context to use a role account like that.
Awesome. Norma's asking if there's value in going back and creating a warm-up email nurture sequence, or if they're cold, or should you just clear them out? I guess this is for older email addresses, or maybe re-engaging people who are on a list and you haven't communicated with in a while.
Yeah, so that's like a broader deliverability question versus like a data integrity question. And the answer is it is usually worth going through and doing a re-engagement sort of sequence. But here's the deal. You don't want to just say, hey, everyone who hasn't opened for 30 days, I want to blast them all through like 10 emails. What you want to do, depending on the size of it, is you want to take little bites out of that old set of emails and you want to run them through, and then you want to then either unsubscribe them at the end if they didn't do anything, or you want to make sure that your future broadcasts are only ever going to those who did end up engaging. So, and you want to do a very small portion at a time. So, depending on your frequency of sending email to your active portion of your list, which we usually define as 30-day openers, um, there's big ranges on that depending on the business and scope and what they expect. But generally speaking, good rule of thumb, 30-day openers. Anyone outside of that window, you want to be very mindful and only take about 10% of the volume that you're sending on to your 30-day openers as your allotted section for how many people per day that you want to run through a re-engagement sequence like that to try to get sort of, we call it proof of life by the end. Can they show us that they are alive, that the email, everything's good, and that they still want to hear from us because they opened and clicked something? You just want to be mindful not to swamp your volume with the quote worst part of your list that is unengaged. And again, as I said in the beginning, sending to bad contacts, and bad is equal in the technical term, like the 7 types that we just covered, but bad is also people who don't want to hear from you anymore, because all of
Hmm.
that is dragging down that reputation of your domain, meaning that the people who do want to hear from you might not see your email because you're too busy focusing on the sort of the ex-boyfriend and girlfriend who really doesn't want to hear from you anymore. You should probably focus on the current relationship who's all in, right? And that's going to provide a lot more value for you. And it's going to boost your reputation because Google, Yahoo, Microsoft are going to say, you know what, this person is focusing on the healthy portion of their list. We want to reward them by making sure that they get to the inbox, whereas people who are just sending to whoever they can find an email address for are the ones that go to spam. So that was kind of a wordy answer, but hopefully it got you where you wanted to be.
Is there a short answer to Marvin's question? He said he missed it. How to preemptively avoid spam traps? Is there sort of a one-liner there?
Yeah, you have to use a tool, and I'll show you a tool in a second.
Use the tool that we're showing. Okay, so and then I want to just answer Mary Jazz's questions real quick. Um, she's essentially asking two-part question of using validation in your sign up box, right? So check to see if it's a valid email, and then two-factor authentication, not two-factor, part like a two-step authentication, right? Where they have to then click on a link that says, yes, I received this email before they're added to the list. Are those both good practices?
Yeah, happy to answer those. So the first question about warning people, that's as much a copywriting problem as it is a technical problem. So setting expectations with your visitors that you want them, like for instance, we will often say, insert your best email address. And then you could say right below that, we kick out bad emails, disposables. We want people that are serious about being here. Sometimes you could even say, depending on your type of offer, you might say, insert your work email
Yeah,
or
that's the
or
one we,
insert
I've
your
seen that
personal email.
more. I've seen that more often, right? Like that they actually won't accept Gmails or Hotmail or those kinds of things, and you have to have a branded domain in order to even insert it there. Mhm.
Yeah, and so that alone, I mean, for some of our signups, we've used that in the past for some of our different softwares, and that alone can kick out 80+% of the bad ones. Uh,
Yeah.
just in terms of like the context of the relationship, I don't just mean from like a technical bad perspective of just the quality of your list goes up, but you're making a trade-off, right? You're gonna get less leads. But at minimum, saying insert your best email, disposable emails that, whatever, will be rejected. Letting people know that, they'll go, okay, well, I think I trust them enough to put my real email, so I'll go ahead and do that. And then you've just upgraded that relationship with that contact anyway. The second question you had about essentially a two-step authentication, we sort of do a strategy of like a soft two-step. And so what I mean by that is we don't skip people who don't explicitly click a confirm email. So like back in the day with Infusionsoft and other platforms that required a two-step, they would send an email, and if the user didn't click that one email, end of line, right? That was game over. Or at best, you could have several reminders that were essentially the same email sent to them multiple times saying, look, you're really not going to get the thing you asked for unless you click this button. But here's the really crazy part. Even people who pay money for stuff have a low consumption rate, right? It's like 3% usually, right? If you guys bought into Experienceify, people who buy a course, 3% of them use it. So convincing someone that they really need to click this one extra link, like adding friction, does protect you, but it means you're going to lose 50 to 60% of your valid leads. We'll never get past that wall. Okay. And so, what I mean by a soft two step is you create a compelling sequence, you create gamification, you create mechanics to your sequence that compel them to engage in some way that is not a wall, but you're going to give yourself multiple bites of the apple by sending them multiple emails within a set sequence, right? Maybe it's 3 emails, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10. And as long as they engage with something along that way, you've compelled them with some piece of value to at least open an email to register for you or click some link to some resource. You can infer that that activity has given you the same value as a two-step. And then instead of throwing away 60% of your list, you're only throwing out 5 or 10% of your list. So it's a soft two-step that allows you to retain a much larger portion of your list, therefore reducing your spend and effort that you have to do to get the same net result of an engaged audience at the end. And instead of saying I'm adding friction, you're saying I'm giving you value and I'm tempting you to take action. Does that make
Right, and
sense?
just let's throw this in here since this is being recorded. One way you could do that for us in Go Plus, right, is all you have to do is have a for the emails that you're sending out, you listen for the reply. So if they reply to any one of those 4 or 5 emails that you're talking about, sort of those nurtures that you're putting out there, you can then just throw a tag on their contact. And then that tag then says, okay, add to newsletter or, validated newsletter or something like that. And then you know who should stay on your list and who shouldn't. It's a really pretty simple technically to do.
Yeah. So like if I were designing based off of that, I might have a tag that says activated, but not like recently active is a different filter, but you may try to find activated as like your healthier portion of your list, right? So they've passed a cleaner because the cleaner can decide, do I leave them subscribed or not? And then the next portion is, are they activated? And you can apply that through as, a reply is a really high quality signal. You could even do it for an open trigger or a click. You could just say, did they do something? And if someone gets to the end of that sequence and they aren't activated, you probably want to give them the boot, right? They might have passed the cleaning, they might be valid, but they just ain't that India. And that's
Yeah.
okay. That's all right. But knowing that is an important filter to cut to say, do I want to spend the time, resources, and effort keeping someone around who doesn't care about what I have to say? That
Mm.
person is not providing value to my business, and more, just as importantly, I'm not providing value to them, or they would have done something. And that's okay, but you don't need to keep them around if that relationship isn't working. You need to boot them off your list so you're not paying to house them, you're not paying to send an email to them, and you're not paying to clean them in the future because they're not providing value to you and you're not providing value to them. Let bygones be bygones. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Cool. All right. What else we got here that was related to this kind of contact quality thing? I don't want to take out all the
I was just say
Q&A.
we're kind of come up to the top of the hour already, so I'd
Yep.
love it if you just kind of just show us the service that Derisk List has, which is a part of
Yeah.
Campaign Refinery, and let's just what we're going to show
Yeah.
you is Travis actually has a list that he's got out there, and he's just going to show you how it works.
Yeah, so Derisk the list is essentially a component that's powered by Campaign Refinery in its own little universe so that you can very simply and in a focused way when you're using, Go Plus, which is really powered by Go High Level, or any of these other email service providers that we don't run because we are an email service provider, but not everyone is in a position to switch, nor should they. It doesn't make sense. It's a big hurdle. But we can give you a huge component of our value just by keeping your list clean. And so we
Mhm.
broke out a component of that feature set to de-risk the list so that you can very easily bolt on what you need to do. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and you can connect it to Go High Level directly, but I'm going to use a CSV file just for brevity here. So I'm going to go ahead and say clean a new file. And I'm going to drag in this example Excel file, a CSV, a comma separated value. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. What you'll see here is that my sheet is processing and it'll be queued. It'll send me an email here in just a moment. But just to kind of give you an idea here, you can go to Go High Level and you just add in your Go High Level credentials. And what this system would do is it would actually go without having to give it a file. It would go into your Go High Level account. It would analyze all of your contacts, assuming you had enough credits, to pay for it, but like it's very inexpensive. And it would check it and validate against all the different 7 types that we just talked about. And importantly, you can have it automatically recheck a contact after 90 days, which is the gold standard because we just talked about over a year, 22% decay on average. That's our data and from HubSpot, who has billions of data points. And so you need to recheck. Like doing a cleaner validation one time in 2026 isn't going to help 2030 version of you, right? You need to keep it
Mhm.
clean along the way. And so being able to hook it in like this is really a set it and forget it kind of solution so that you can clean your list today and keep it clean going forward so that every time you hit send, you don't have to worry, is this legit or not, or is this safe to send to or not?
I want to emphasize 2 points there before, as we're waiting for your list to get done. One, just reminder for everybody, Go High Level, that the icon that he has on there, that is Go Plus. Remember, Go Plus is a white labeled version of Go High Level, so that's what you're using. And then secondly, this answers Norma your question that you put up there earlier about adding this to your to-do list. If you can set it and forget it, once every 90 days it goes and it actually is cleaning automatically in the background. Um, it's less for you to do, right? So
Yep,
just wanted to
ex-
emphasize those 2 points.
exactly. So I'm gonna go ahead and download the result of this file, and then I'll pull this up and I will share this. I'll swap my screen here for what I'm sharing, and I'll show you. This is just a small sample of 22 people, I believe. And so let's pull this up. So here's an example of what the file would be. And then of course, again, this would be all automatic if you hook it into your Go Plus. Um, and what we see here is we see validation status and we see the actual email that was run. And so in this case, we had a malformed because it had a bunch of asterisks to a Comcast email. We see we actually had a bot account in here. So this is not a real human, even though it's a Gmail account. And there's nothing that you or I looking at this email address would tell you that that is a bot account, and yet it is because sometimes people create bot networks on real email addresses, and it's not real people. They never actually do anything of value. We see we got some role accounts here, so we see admin and info. These are very different domains, but we were able to tell by the front end of that. You do get some unknowns, but then you get some verified ones, like this is a real email address. Undeliverable, right? So we talked about hard versus soft bounces. So we have a handful of undeliverables here. We have Gmails, we have, custom domains, whatever. We have some known complainers. So 1955 Buster at gmail.com is known to be someone who likes to complain on emails. Um, sorry, Buster, but you're busted, I guess.
I
Uh,
can see Archie Bunker sitting in the chair right now.
yeah, upset about it. But knowing that in advance is very helpful. And then we also have, a couple of these disposable email services here that if you were to go to these, you would see that they are by design self-destructing emails. So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of variety of these. This was just a quick sample because I wanted a smaller form, file because sometimes the big files take a long time. But this gives you an idea about what's going on. And then if we have more information about it, so like this undeliverable, we actually have a bounce message that tells you it's because their mailbox is full. So, but we knew in advance their mailbox is full, probably a sign it's either abandoned already or going to be abandoned, because a lot of us, especially for Gmail, there's quite a bit of space. But you will know in advance if your email is going to potentially harm your reputation because it is not going to either get there, or if it does get there, it's risky and doesn't provide you value. So this is a really simple file-based example. Like I said, you can drop in the key and you're good to go. But just wanted to kind of show you guys how it works. It's quite simple, right? Took us 60 seconds and we got a really useful result from an otherwise kind of opaque list of emails, right? So great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I already saw some, eyes wide open and jaws dropping there. Like one of the great things about that list, even though it was just 22, is the level of detail, right? Bot, role player, and goes through those 7 ones. And I think so many of us are sitting with lists, even if it's a couple hundred people, that you just don't know who they are. You forget who they are, or where did I get that email? Those kinds of things. And so it's super powerful, just knowing that right there. Um, at the risk of sort of stealing some thunder here or whatever, Jane is asking, what's the minimum size of list that makes this cost effective? Can we have a little drum roll about what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So, essentially, we have used our leverage for good, right? It's like with great power comes great responsibility. And because we are validating like hundreds of millions of contacts, seriously, it's kind of wild. My goal is to kind of be like Robin Hood of cleaning here, where I
Mm.
want to use that leverage and uh, all that machine learning and stuff to bring the cost down. So we have actually put together a package here that I think you'll find to be extremely fair because you only pay for what you use. You can use a very small amount and these credits don't expire. So you can buy the minimum amount, which I'll show you in a minute, as little as 19 bucks. I mean, it's like basically nothing. And when you exhaust that amount, you can then top back up automatically. Our average price is about half of the market. So if you go look at other quality cleaning services whose entire business is cleaning, it's the only way they can make money. Shocker, they charge you more for it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas for us, we are a decently sized email service provider where cleaning is a significant component. And the reason that I broke it out for this is because as we continue to scale that volume, we can continue to bring our cost basis down because the more people that use us, the more data points we have, and the better our system becomes, and the more cost effective it becomes. And it means the cheaper we can make it for everybody. So we have an incentive to get as many people using this as possible with as many cleans and validations as possible because everyone is going to benefit. And importantly, this is not the only way that we can generate revenue for our business. So we don't have our entire like future wealth and well-being anchored on this being at a maximum price. We want it to be at a low price because we benefit more from the scale than we do from the margin. Does that make sense? So that's
Absolutely.
our reason for being here. And so let me just kind of show you what we put together. So basically, on top of the being half of the price of everyone else, we decided because I've known Murray for years and Experienceify is an awesome platform, we want to do something cool for you guys. And so we're actually giving you on your first transaction an additional 30% off our already essentially half price credits. So you're getting it extremely affordably. Um,
I'll
so
throw that up there right there.
go for it. Yep. And so I'll also pull up that page.
Oh, sorry. Were
No,
you
no,
going to
no, no,
pull
no,
up
no,
that page
no,
on
no, no.
your
You're
side?
good. If you go to that page, like where the QR code goes at
Let's see.
deriskthelist.com/XP, what you'll see at the bottom is you will see an idea of what that first transaction price would be based on the number of credits. So
So
when you
where
sign up,
my,
it's all the way at the bottom. Yep. So what you're going to see is you're going to
there we go.
get basically a custom offer that we think is well suited to you. You can elect to buy a different amount. So if you say, hey, this is a pretty good deal, I want to buy more credits than I think I'm going to need for quite some time, feel free to do so. They do not expire. They can use it as, as long as we're a service, you can continue to use it. Um, and the cool part is when you sign up, you tell us how big your list is, and we try to basically custom build a package for you where we give you an offer where it's like, hey, this is how many credits we think you're going to need to clean for the year because it's every 90 days. So it's your list size essentially times four. But at minimum, you want to be able to clean your list once solidly to see how that works out. And as far as your question about the size that it matters, I talked about earlier, out of those seven types, it takes one spam trap to give your reputation a black eye. So
Hmm.
even if you only have 100 people and you buy a tiny little chunk of credits, you're going to be good for a very, very long time. And you're going to be de-risked from those spam traps and those bad emails that are actually risky. But it is true to say that the bigger your list is, that the more valuable this becomes. But that I don't think it necessarily takes away from the value on a small list, especially to have that proactive protection built in. It's kind of like having an insurance policy for your email list.
I love it. Thanks. I'm gonna have ask everybody to aspire to the 250K level because you should all have 250K on your list. No, I'm just playing right now. But that's I know everybody in this community, and we're all interested in being the most successful course creators that we are out there today, or that we can be. And so you know. One of the things is that some of these numbers can look very intimidating, but I hear what Travis is saying right now. Like if you think about, because this offer is 30% off your first purchase, to think about, hey, look, I've got 2,000 people on my list right now, and so if you clean that four times, it's 8,000 people. You could go for the 10K, and you're paying 29 bucks, and you're going to be able to fit that 1 year in there. Do I have that correct? Correct, Travis?
Yep, exactly. Because it's a bucket of non-expiring credits. So the main thing you do when you hit this page is you sign up so that you can secure that entry price and you'll have actually about 48 hours or so to make good on that offer. What you're doing is you're basically
Sure.
snagging your spot in line so that you can claim that extra 30% discount. And you can either elect to sign up like during the sign up process, or then you can go into your account and you'll see that it's 30% off across the board. And you can go in and say, hey, actually, I want the bigger package because I want to use this. I want 4 years because I got 30% off by paying in advance, right?
Yeah,
That is
sure.
an option. I'm not saying you have to do that, but that is available to you should you choose it. And you'll have 48 hours for that to be good. And then after that, it goes back to the normal pricing, which is still very aggressive. But as the deal here with the, Experienceify and for those of you on Go Plus, hop on in there, snag your extra discount, and I think you'll really appreciate what it can do for you on your list quality.
Thanks. I want to reemphasize as well, one of the first questions, this is total transparency here. When Travis came to me with this idea for this webinar right here, my first question to him was, I said, look, we use Go Plus and it has the validation feature in it, right? You can just turn that on, and for a very small fee every month, it goes through and it validates your emails. And he said, well, yeah, but right. And so I hope that what's been informative, and obviously he convinced me pretty immediately after walking me through, the seven different types of risks and whatnot, that this is a much more robust problem and it requires a much more robust solution. And so I just want to reemphasize that because we promote Go Plus to such an extent, this is something that we believe was important enough to put out there. So that's a big deal. Let's see. Norma, yes, exactly. You sign up, yeah, using this offer page right here. You did have another question, Norma. I just want to flag that you're asking about how do you move your entire email list from, I can't remember the name of the service. It was started with an O, uh, from Entreport to Go Plus. That's a different process. So what I recommend is that we go through, uh, if you want to claim this offer, as Travis said, sign up for the offer and then choose what you want. And then I will walk you through the process of transferring in all of your contacts into Go Plus so that you can just use that service in that way. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see.
And then when you hook this into your Go Plus, when you import your contacts from Entreport into Go Plus, this system will clean it for you. So
So Will Reynolds is asking, his question is more of an email marketing question than cleaning. It says, we keep landing in promotions on Gmail for very engaged real people. Is there any way around that?
yeah, I got 2 points about that. One is I know that a lot of marketers have a lot of angst over the promotions tab. But I want to point out that the promotions is still the inbox. It is not the primary inbox, but it's not spam. It's not necessarily a deliverability problem per se, but I do fully understand that it does mean that fewer people are going to see, open, and click your offers, right? Um, One might argue that the promotions tab is actually where a lot of our emails should live, and that's Google's intent. But there are ways to improve your odds of landing in the primary inbox. The number one way you can help is by stimulating replies. So by getting replies from your email list, ideally even with campaigns to automate some of that function, you're going to sort of help Google see you as more than just a brand who sends offers. You're seeing it as an entity that the individual recipient has a relationship with. And it's important to realize that there's a lot of personalization on an individual user level, especially for Google, where obviously is the one, the promotions tab that you're talking about. And so you're going to have to put an effort and create campaigns and mechanisms that can convince each individual person through reply campaigns, ideally, to upgrade their relationship with you from brand to person they trust. Okay. And that's the only way around it. It's really, really kind of the bottom line because if they're opening and clicking, that's fantastic, right? And you're still landing in the inbox technically. But if you want to land in primary, you have to show Google that you are the most relevant thing that they could show that user. Because
Mm.
promotions means you asked for this, we think it's acceptable, we think this is a valid thing for you to receive. But if they are replying and they're doing higher intent signals that you are the best thing that Google could show them, Google's going to show you above everything else, right? And the way they do that is by moving you to primary, right? And highlighting your content because the user has shown and elected to engage with you at a higher, more intimate level. And that's the only way that you can upgrade your brand placement is by upgrading your brand relationship with the actual individual.
So I want to re-emphasize what you're saying in a different way. And I always talk about this because I think I have more gray hair than Travis, even though I loved all of your 90s references. That was fantastic. It's training your users, it's training your community as you engage them. So it's from the very first moment that you are meeting them as a prospect for somebody who's considering, either getting a lead magnet or, signing up for a webinar for you or anything like that. The minute that you start engaging that relationship, start requesting very nicely and, professionally or, in the tone that you communicate with, teach them how to respond to you, right? And teach them how to find your email and ask for them to respond to you and do it every time. It's just like, you've heard Marisa say so many different times over the years where it's just you can't be afraid to engage your audience and don't be afraid to ask them to do things because they're there for a reason. And if they've made the choice to give you their email address, especially their valid, real one, then help them to, you're providing them with a really valuable service to say, look, let me help you make sure that my valuable emails show up in your inbox. And you do that by every time you say, look, hey, here's my new offer. Go to your inbox right now and actually reply to that offer and say, hey, I got it. Thanks so much. And say, I read those emails and actually respond to when they do reply, even if it's like a thank you, or whatever, have somebody respond to that so that you're showing Google or Microsoft or whoever that relationship is real and there, there's real engagement there. At the end of the day, it's like so many things in sales and marketing and whatnot that there's no there's no easy answer to actually doing the work, right? At the end of the day, we live in the age of AI and all these things. Like we want the bots to do everything, but at the end of the day, you've got to do the work in order to build the community that trusts you. And the more that they trust you, that's where all the gold is. And I'm going to refer back to what Travis just said. He's got a list of just 4,000 people that make him more money than, millions of views on YouTube. And so if that doesn't tell you everything, then I'm not sure what will. I
Yeah,
think
I
there
mean,
might be one more. Let's
yeah,
see.
each I'm not taking away, each step of that funnel is an important piece of building the business, right? But the intimacy of the relationship that you can curate on the email list of a nice tight group of people that want to be there, that want to give you their feedback, their voice. That is like that's the gold. That's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. That is like what everyone promises about email. And it's true when you stack it in the right way and you ask for the right interaction and you do the right validation and you do all the things, what you're left with is just the cream. And that's what we're all after, I think.
All right. Travis, thank you so much for taking an hour and 15 minutes out of your time today. Really appreciate you putting this on the table and the super detailed explanations about those seven validation features around email and why it's important to clean. Folks, on your screen right now is the QR code as well as the URL to go to Derisk list right now with the offer for just our community for Experienceify. As Travis said, go grab it today, go sign up so that you get that 30% discount off the service. And as you started there, I'm just going to reemphasize it. If let's just say that you've got 1,000 people on your list right now, right? And you choose this 10K size. You could choose the 5K size and you could do it 4 times, right? 1 year. But if you choose 10Ks, that you're good for like what is that? uh
Like two
like
like two
four
and a half
four
years.
years. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
yeah, like 2. But hey, that also assumes you're not growing,
Yeah.
right? So the goal of the businesses that we're creating here is, hey, you got 1,000 today. Hopefully in 6 months from now, that's going to be doubled, et cetera. So $29 to be able to clean your list for the next 2 years. That sounds like a pretty good deal to me. But thanks so much, Travis. Thank you to everybody else for coming, and we'll see you on the other side.
My pleasure. Thanks for being here, guys.
Cheers.